What's up, guys? Brady Figuel here, coming at you with a review of the new Mammoth album, The End, released almost 2 weeks ago now, Friday, October 24th. This is the third album from Wolfgang Van Halen's solo project, formerly known as Mammoth WVH, which is, of course, the original band name for Van Halen, and Wolfgang is obviously the son of legendary guitarist Eddie Van Halen. And the thing is, the response to this album has been so confusing to me, because everyone, I feel like, is saying things to somewhat of an extent of, oh, this is finally the album where Wolfgang steps out of his father's shadow and out of Van Halen's shadow and establishes his own sound. That just confuses me so much, because listening to the first two Mammoth albums, they sound extremely modern. They take way more influence from Alter Bridge or Foo Fighters than Van Halen. They sound nothing like classic rock to me. I would never classify those two records as classic rock. Wolfgang himself sings in a very high register that does take blatant influence from Alter Bridge vocalist Miles Kennedy. The music itself at times is heavier or more progressive, or it just pulls from a lot more different subgenres of rock music, which will be a recurring theme that I discuss throughout this review. And the thing about those first two Mammoth albums for me is they were good records. Overall, I enjoyed both of them. They overall did, though, have somewhat of a uniform sound throughout. My favorite songs off of those first two records were the tracks that ventured out a little bit more in various different directions, like the moody track Circles off of the first record, or the really proggy track Optimist off of the last one. The track Right off of the last record has this crushing double bass section at the end. Those were the parts that, to me, really separated Mammoth from any modern rock band, and especially any classic rock band, including Van Halen. But that's only half of the confusion that I'm getting from this record, because not only have I not seen those first two records as classic rock pretty much in any way, but I do hear arguably the most classic rock influence on this record compared to the first two. I mean, just listen to the intro on the lead single, and also title track, The End. I mean, that tapping and those kind of those open guitar chords that just ring when the full band kicks in, that's so classic rock influence. The solo later in the song definitely is very much an homage to Van Halen in particular, yet it still does incorporate other influences, which again I will touch on later. Also, The Spell, the second single, with that really catchy, bouncy main riff. The verses too bring in a little bit more of that funk influence that may kind of have to do with the classic rock influence being more present on this song to me. The chorus on One of a Kind brings in some classic rock vibes to me. And to me, this is just more classic rock influence than Mammoth has ever displayed up until this point on this third record. So that's another thing that really confuses me. It's like, oh, he's stepping out of his dad's shadow apparently, but this record has some really blatant classic rock influence at the same time. But just to be clear, I don't mean that in a bad way. One of the best things about this record is just how it, more so than the first two, pulls from so many different subgenres of rock music. Like the song Happy is this really somber grunge type song with a really cool vibe the entire time, and it really distinguishes itself from the other songs on here. It's really gloomy. I love that groovy riff that comes in after the chorus. The next track, Better Off, also has a really catchy riff and brings in more of a grunge influence as well, although that one's definitely a little bit more, I don't know if I want to say upbeat, but has a bit more energy to it, whereas Happy is a bit more sludgy and methodical. Something New brings in some pop punk energy a little bit, which is somewhat familiar for Mammoth. I mean, if you listen to tracks like Miles Above Me and Erase Me, both off of the previous record, this is something that Mammoth and Wolfgang definitely has brought to the forefront before, but this track maybe does so more than those songs, or any, like I will mention, more than any other song that has displayed that up to this point. The song is fun, it's really catchy the entire time, and kind of on the flip side of bringing in some punk influence, the next track, Selfish, has somewhat of like a hardcore flair to it, especially in that main riff. The song does have somewhat of a contrast the entire time, which is something that's usually a little hit or miss for me. But for the most part, I think Wolfgang pulls it off pretty well on this song. The chorus in particular is what I'm talking about, just because it's a lot more upbeat than the rest of the song. But it's just like so powerful and such a soaring chorus that it doesn't really become an issue, especially considering that the heavy parts too are just so crushing on this song. And there's also All in Good Time, the closing ballad on here, which is another track that does kind of amplify more of that classic rock influence. It reminds me a lot of Distance, actually, which was the first song Mammoth, I think, ever released. In a way that it is a ballad, but it still has somewhat of like an upbeat, positive energy to it. And the song overall just has some really nice melodies. All of these songs that I've used as examples are to further this main point of the fact that on this record, while Mammoth has always had elements of these different rock subgenres, they're pushed further out more than ever before. The end, the title track, despite having very much of a classic rock flair to it, it brings in some funk influence. That's something that is more just kind of hinted at in this song, although that kind of ending part where you got the funk riff over the double bass section is just so energetic and is maybe one of the most creative sections on this record. My favorite track by far is the opener, One of a Kind. The structure of this song is, again, something that really makes it stick out to me. I do think one thing that this album is missing that was very present and welcome on the first two Mammoth records is a song that dives into some prog. On the first track, on the first album, you had Hold Really Right, and then you had Optimist, like I mentioned on the last record, and that is kind of missing on this record, but at the same time, this track does bring in some unorthodox structural ideas, which I like, just in the way that it starts and ends with more of a mood-focused approach, and then you have more of like that straightforward style of a rock song kind of sandwiched in between. Although that main riff does have that cool like element of darkness to it that just kind of hinted at in the melodies themselves. I wouldn't describe this track as a dark song overall, but it's one of those riffs and sections that implies darkness rather than just showing it to you, if that makes sense. I also really like Wolfgang's kind of somewhat aggressive vocals in the second verse. I think that is an experiment that has gone well. He sounds more gruff than ever before on that section. So definitely there's a lot to love on this record, and I can see why it's getting so many positive reviews. But for me, there are some songs on here that don't really pan out too well, most notably the track Same Old Song, which is somewhat of an ironic title, because to me this song is just like a blatant recycling of Don't Back Down off of the first record, which is a song that actually I really hate. I don't like that song at all. I cannot believe that it was like the big hit off of that record. It was used in a TV show, I think, Animal Kingdom. I was watching that show and I heard that song and I was like, really? I just don't get the appeal with this song. That the riff is just really boring and uninventive, and the chorus is just lazy, if we're being honest. I mean, he's just yelling, yeah. I mean, how many times have we heard shit like that? And the thing is, while I'm talking about the track Don't Back Down here, I can use those exact same words and talk about this song, Same Old Song, which is a very fitting title. It also has kind of like that half-rapped vocal delivery that doesn't do a whole lot for me. This song, along with Don't Back Down, are just really vanilla modern rock tracks to me. Like they're tracks that I feel like I would hear in like a Dodge Ram commercial or a Ford F-150 commercial. Like on Animal Kingdom, and I'm just remembering this exact scene now, when that song played, they were like, it was just a montage of like them riding motorcycles through like the mountains, and like that's pretty self-explanatory. There's also the track I Really Wanna, which brings in a little bit of like a butt rock vibe to it that just doesn't really pan out too well for me. I will admit that main riff is really, really catchy. It's definitely an earworm, but the rest of the song just, the energy doesn't do a whole lot for me. It almost brings in somewhat of like a Nickelback vibe. The chorus, along with its like cringy lyrics a little bit, him saying, I really want to fuck with you. I don't know, that idea doesn't do a whole lot for me. And the chorus itself just sounds a little bit like dull and sluggish. So there's two tracks, one that I really don't like and one that kind of just underwhelms me. But aside from that, this is a really solid album. I never understood the Van Halen comparisons from the musical standpoint, and this album furthers that. Yeah, there's some classic rock influence and some tributes, obviously, to Van Halen, but like this album is very modern sounding, as are the first two records. I absolutely love the subgenre blending on here. It's pushed more so than the first two records by far. I mean, you got the funk on the end, you have classic rock, you have grunge, you have pop punk, you have hardcore. There's so much kind of combined together on this album. As far as overarching notes, I do think that some of the choruses in particular do feel a little bit familiar sounding at this point, like the title track and the spell. And this album definitely has the same overall feeling that the first two records have, which isn't bad. I mean, those two records, like I've said, are two records I enjoy, but I think moving forward, I think Mammoth's sound would benefit a little bit more from having a record that... I think maybe some ways he could do this would be to maybe go into more of a progressive direction overall. I mean, listen to the songs that I mentioned earlier as being more prog influenced. If he made a whole album like that, that'd be fucking sick. Or just amp up the mood overall on this album. I mean, songs like Circles and like Waiting off of the last record, which are very mood focused, are highlights off of those records for me. He could go heavier. I mean, I know Wolfgang is a fan of bands like Killswitch Engage and Gojira. I mean, if some more of that influence crept in, how sick would that be? Overall, though, this is a good, diverse record that maintains Wolfgang's trajectory of pumping out some solid modern rock material. And as a result of all those things, I'm going to score this album a 23 out of 30. As always, thank you guys so much for watching. Remember to hit the subscribe button for more rock and metal-related content and album reviews. Remember to comment your thoughts on this album below if you've heard it. Check the description for all my links. Until next time, I'll see you guys later. Peace.